when you look at Traore and Burkina Faso now, I think there are four categories of people when you look at how they are dealing with the Traore. There is category number one of leaders who are wedded to their colonizers, who think, oh, this young man, we've seen many like him, he's just a flash in the pan, he'll come and go. That is category number one. And I'm sure they tell their masters in the West, we have seen many, didn't we see Sankara, didn't we see Lumumba, didn't we see Nkrumah, didn't we see Machel? Category number one. Category number two are those who are saying, I wish it was me who was getting this kind of adulation. What could I have done in order to ensure that my name is emblazoned on every other media? Those are actuated by ego and malice and envy and jealousy. That is another category of African leaders. The other category of African leaders are those who fear. They fear that what this young man and his compatriots are doing is setting a bad example, and I must now look very keenly at what my young men and women in the army are doing. They can't sleep because they fear that they themselves can meet the fate of those who are removed by Traore. So they fear in that regard. Then there is the fourth positive category. They are few and far between. They are the ones who say, yes, these things we call unconstitutional changes of power, this is not unconstitutional change of power. This is rebellion, and not just rebellion. This is revolution. And they are saying, let us not ostracize these young men and women. They actually represent a new generation of Africans who are impatient, who feel let down. Let us support them. One of them who is emerging in that category is my very good friend, John Dramani Mahama of Ghana, who upon returning to power in Ghana, told the ECOWAS leaders, we must engage the Sahelians. And he's been to Ouagadougou, he's been to Bamako, he's been to Niamey. They are saying that this situation is a clarion call to the entire continent of Africa, that if we don't change for the better, then we will be eliminated. So when you look at the situation in Burkina Faso, those are the four forces that are operating within the African continent. Then there is a fifth force from outside of the continent. This is France. These young people are making us to lose our spheres of influence. They think they are going to make something to work in Burkina Faso. We will not allow it. What we are going to do is to cause and support insurgency so that if there is no total breakdown of law and order in those countries, then there will be a civil war. And I can tell you, they are doing everything in their power, covertly and overtly, to undermine those administrations. And I have no doubt in my mind that on a daily basis, they have individuals in their intelligence community asking, how can we eliminate him? Can we eliminate him by poisoning his toothpaste like we tried before with other people? What do we use? On a daily basis, they are planning. In 1965, Nkrumah gave an iconic speech. He said that it is the duty of the military to support the government in power and the duty of the military not to be involved in politics. But if it becomes necessary for the military to get involved in politics, it should only be for a short time as justified by necessity, and then they must go back to their military duties. In other words, even the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah himself, who unfortunately ended up being a victim of a military coup, did appreciate that there may be circumstances in which it can become necessary. In Africa, why is it becoming necessary? It is becoming necessary because those who are in office have perfected the art of sustaining themselves in power by manipulating the ballot. You know, there are 55 African countries, 54 recognized internationally. 40 of those countries print their ballots outside of the continent of Africa. And there is evidence in the cases of some of these countries that ballots are actually pre-marked in favor of certain candidates. So you can wake up all you want very early in the morning. But as was said by one leader many years ago, it is not those who vote that matter, but those who count the votes. So today, you walk across Africa and you hear young people saying, what is the purpose of voting anyway? The result is predetermined. And these individuals, once they get into power, what is their greatest claim to fame? They are thieves, they are liars, they are murderers. So people are becoming helpless. And it is in this context when an enlightened or a group of enlightened individuals in the armed forces then seize power through the barrel of the gun, then they get the people's support, because the people say, we don't like these individuals, and therefore we are not going to listen to these individuals who say that power has been seized unconstitutionally. We are going to argue that the end justifies the means. And this is why, therefore, coups are becoming something that are celebrated. That is why there were people dancing in the streets of Niamey. That is why there were people dancing in the streets of Bamako. That's why there were people dancing in the streets of Libreville. That is why there were people dancing in the streets of Ouagadougou. And I'm sure there are many more in different African countries waiting to dance and asking themselves, when will an enlightened group of men and women emerge in our country to save us from the clutches of these megalomaniacs who have succeeded in manipulating the ballot? Burkina Faso has tried to achieve many things, but I also want us to contextualize Burkina Faso. The Burkina Faso economy is a small economy. Its GDP at very best is just slightly over 20 billion United States dollars. That is a small economy. But as the saying goes, you cut your coat according to your cloth. And what the administration of Traoré has tried to do is, number one, to restore people's confidence and pride and esteem. That must never be forgotten, that people simply want to live free. They don't want to feel that they are enslaved or they are slaves of anybody. I think that has been done, giving meaning to the name of the country, the Burkina Faso, the land of the upright men. Number two, they have identified key areas that touch society. And therefore, you see very deliberate focus on agriculture. Deliberate focus, not that they want to mechanize their agriculture in a dramatic way, but ensuring that household situation is proper, that people can have food and grow food that will feed themselves. That, I think, we see that there is quite some investment in agriculture, and attempts actually are being made to even mechanize agriculture to the extent that it is necessary so that they do not rely on importation from food. That is also happening. The third thing is education, because people recognize that education is an important investment for younger people, and you can see that there's attempts, even in the face of very limited budgets, attempts to ensure that schools are equipped and schools are being managed in a manner that is responsive to the realities of the day, including technology and artificial intelligence. Another area that they have done very well is with a view to taking control of their natural resources. You will know that many of the resources, particularly in the mining sector, for which Burkina Faso is very famous, was under the control of many companies which were based either in Canada, the United States of America, Australia, and of course France. They are saying all the minerals and all these must now be mined for the benefit of the people of Burkina Faso. And they are not saying we are not going to trade with the world. No. They are simply saying there must be trade that ensures that the income that is generated and or realized from the exploitation of our minerals is used for the benefit of the people of Burkina Faso. They have also entered into what I call very useful engagements, and I think there are ongoing negotiations, particularly with the Russian government, with a view to having energy. And I think that in itself is useful in terms of transferring technology, so that some of the seeds of, or rather the fruits of the seed that are being sown today will only germinate after a short while. And the other thing that I think they have tried to do is to ensure that they, as much as is possible, control their affairs. The decision to have a passport that is printed and covers the 3 Sahelian countries of Burkina, of Mali, and of course Niger is a good thing. Having a currency that is not pegged on France, CFA franc, I think it is a good thing. Having a military that is focused on the people's plight is important. In eliminating institutions which are simply parasitic upon the population is also a good thing. This is the era and the period of disruption. So what has happened is that a lot of things have been disrupted in the last 3 years, and now they are beginning to get into the era of consolidation. And that is where you now must recognize that you are part of the international community. And that is why Burkina Faso is now receiving very many visitors who are going to that. I know friends of mine from different parts of the world have been visiting Burkina Faso, and I and others actually will be visiting Burkina Faso in the month of October. And this is happening because they have also demonstrated that this could possibly be the beginning of true Pan-Africanism in practical terms. So a lot of things are happening there. And I think when you are doing well, if you allow me a football analogy, when you are moving with the ball towards the goal, the noise is useful to encourage you to hold the ball well, in the knowledge that it is only when you score that you make us happy. So the ball is moving towards the goal, and those who are outside are cheering, and we want to see the ball at the back of the net. Then we will cheer even more. As I said, Ibrahim Traore is a symbol, and a symbol is part of the system. So what young people must realize that success is not an individual achievement. You achieve because you are part of a team. You achieve because you are part of a chain, and a chain has many components. You achieve because you are focused. You achieve because you are courageous. You achieve because you love your country and you are selfless. You achieve because you don't have insatiable appetite for good things. You achieve because you are able to identify friends. You achieve because you have conquered yourself and you want to serve. Those are the positive lessons that young people must draw: discipline, courage, focus. Africa stands at crossroads. And when you are at crossroads, you choose which path you are going to follow. What is happening in Burkina Faso, and by extension in the Sahelian region to include Niger and Mali, is a good thing. A good thing because it is being demonstrated that young Africans can rise above the parapet of mediocrity and begin to shine light in the right direction. Our prayer and our hope is that the people will keep these leaders on a short leash, because good governance must always be underpinned and protected by eternal vigilance of the population, because power can corrupt, and all of us are capable of being corrupted by power. So we must always remind everybody who is in a position of leadership that you hold power in trust for us. And that is why we must remind Traore, remind Atimi Goita, remind Shani that you are there, but you are merely the arrow's head. The arrow's head without the tail cannot move.